and just explain what the Mujahideen was for the audience, and what that meant domestically in Afghanistan, what the people of Afghanistan were experiencing during this period, and how obviously that, I mean, unimaginable trauma, generational trauma and suffering continues to this day.
Sure. So one way of thinking about it is that the Mujahideen, which is just Arabic for warriors, um, they were essentially like mafia chieftains, and that meant that they were competing for the equivalent of state authority with the state, which is a pretty it basically meant that in the places in the mostly in the countryside, in the smaller cities that were especially not in Kabul, you had essentially the existing government fighting for basic authority, control over territory, with these warlords who were getting pumped full of cash. And the consequence was, just these constant fights over territory that would level, where people lived. Civilians suffered from bombings, from, the both from the air and from the Soviet side, and then also you had, bicycle bombs from the Mujahideen side that they had been given by the CIA. They'd been trained to make by the CIA. There's a, the what the Afghan experienced throughout this period, as a basis for the Mujahideen that were fighting to liberate the country, was just the outright destruction of the country. And it's a thing that really intensifies once, because once the Soviet Union is defeated, the Mujahideen transform from, they cease being called the Mujahideen, and they become, people now generally refer to them as warlords. And it's, like all that happens is that, well, there's no more state to speak of. So now they are all competing to effectively have that title. And that's, you can sort of track the degree of violence along those lines as the conflict develops over the years.
To get specific and offer a couple individuals who
Sure.
were, well-known commanders and our favorite commanders. And we should also say it wasn't just America funding these guys and training these guys. It was really a State Department. I don't know if it was a CIA or State Department cable or memo. It calls it an axis, which is, you may not be on the right side of something if you're calling your own team the Axis, but it was America, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, the Chinese communists actually at the time, because at that point they had made nice with the U.S. and were now considered the Soviets the bigger enemy, and other participants, Israel, South Africa, sometimes. So they were all funding and sort of matching each other's funds for the Mujahideen, but America was by far, it was the superpower. So we were the one that exercised perhaps the most influence along with Pakistan. At any rate, Gulbuddin Hekmatyar is one of our favorite commanders. It was sort of the vision anyone has of a Taliban or an Al-Qaeda, sort of severe features and, brutal attitude toward women and any kind of progressive society that's possible in Afghanistan. He was one of the earliest contacts that we made way back in the 70s. And he was an open criminal and warlord at the time. More sort of a smooth criminal was this guy named Ahmed Shah Massoud, who was sort of built up in the West as the kind of religious Democrat, or sort of like progressive fighter, who, if you read the actual CIA guys' accounts, his guys ran as many drugs and executed their strategy with as much sexual violence against their opponents as any other commander in the Mujahideen. Really, really blood-curdling stuff. But you kind of it was like a good cop, bad cop thing. You kind of had to have one guy who looked like, well, he's one of the good ones. He's one of the moderates. I mean, we saw this with Syria, the moderate rebels and all this stuff. It's a good way to kind of like, provide a sheen that gives some illusion to, this being a possible progressive policy in some way. And there were other guys who were kind of just, hucksters, who were, I kind of like respect how they just took what they could from the U.S. trough and said, look, they're sending us, free guns and money. Let's just say we're holy warriors, when in fact they were, as Noah said, mafia dons. And so there's a lot of colorful characters, but guys you would not want controlling the eastern part of your country or the western part of your country or whatever, once there's no law and no state anymore. And that's precisely what happened after the Soviets left.
And I feel like everyone should subscribe to Blowback, so and people are more familiar with the recent history, right? So we don't. I'm so much more interested in just like setting this table for people, because obviously it's super key to know that our involvement in Afghanistan did not just start after 9/11. This is all of the context that leads to this particular point. And before I let you guys go, if you could just re-emphasize the scale of money, of weapons that we poured into Afghanistan that leads directly to, like, we shouldn't have left Afghanistan to save the women, to teach them how to read, is what they said to us when Biden withdrew, which was a very good thing that Biden did. To just shine a light on how disingenuous that is, because of all of that history, the amount of money, the amount that we poured into this project, which was an abject failure and destructive force.
Yeah, I would say that the hypocrisy, of course, about the women's rights. I mean, we're already letting money slide to the Taliban again. We've frozen bank assets, of course, but that goes back as a canard, because when the communist government, for whatever their other flaws in their political practice, they were trying like hell to build schools and to educate women, and we, more than any other force, made sure that would never become a nationwide reality in Afghanistan. And we have a great interview that we sprinkle throughout the season, and then have the full thing in the bonus episodes if people subscribe, with an Afghan politician named Malalai Joya, who was the first and youngest woman MP, member of parliament in Afghanistan, who has more right to speak on this kind of thing than anyone else. And she was a lifelong advocate against the U.S. Presence in Afghanistan. But the scale of Operation Cyclone, forget what comes later. I mean, it was upwards of 10 to 12 billion, which at the time was, again, not only the largest CIA operation in history, but a lot of money. And
also probably the tip of the iceberg. The nature of covert operations, it should be stressed, is that, like, you don't ever really know fully about what's below the surface, especially ones that, were as tightly held as this was for as many years.
Billions upon billions of dollars that went to everything, not just guns, but school books for children that taught kids how to basically read and write and count in jihadist terminology that we printed in the out of the University of Nebraska, which when the Taliban took over, they happily used. It wasn't just guns and trucks and stuff. It was everything, like every part of their country we tried to shape toward a jihad. And of course that, today there are many such cases, but it was billions of dollars. And it, as one U.S. official put it after 9/11, this is going to change your country forever. Forget us. You could say that about any point of our involvement in Afghanistan's history. We were always affecting the next chapter of their history against their will, in every way possible.
Yeah. Any final thoughts here, Noah, before we let you go?
Just that, first, thanks again for having us on. And that if you want to listen to the whole season all at once right now, so season 4 is available fully right now for $25. You can sign up at blowback.show. Just click the button that said subscribe. It'll bring you there. You can listen on all your favorite podcast apps. The archive, you get all of our episodes from the past for free, and you'll be getting updates and promo codes for upcoming merch, which we are doing for the first time.
Oh, cool.
So did I miss anything, Brendan? Oh yeah, and the score, because Brendan does all of the music and the sound.
No way.
Yeah, so the third, and we're I guess this will be your third soundtrack release, which comes out on September 25th.